So as you've probably heard, the SEC just approved several Bitcoin ETFs. They started trading yesterday, and in just one day, billions of dollars flowed into these ETFs. And so in today's video, we're going to look at this. We're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to show you what the SEC did and show you some of the Bitcoin ETFs that have just launched. And then, believe it or not, I'm going to make what I think is the best case for sort of the long-term buy and hold, even Boglehead investors, the best case for investing in a Bitcoin ETF. And then I'm going to share with you what I'm doing in regard to Bitcoin. So that's what we're going to do. Let's get started. So the SEC did approve spot ETFs, spot Bitcoin ETFs. There was Grayscale had a Bitcoin ETF, but it used futures to try to track the price of Bitcoin. A spot ETF actually owns Bitcoin itself. The SEC had previously not approved those types of ETFs. Why? Because they felt there was too much market manipulation in the price of Bitcoin. I know no one's surprised at that idea, but now they've changed their minds, and at least the Republican commissioners, there were 3 of them, voted in favor. The 2 Democrats voted against this decision. Here's the actual statement. For those of you that want to read this, I will leave it as a link below the video, and there you go. So with that, several new Bitcoin ETFs launched, and I will tell you they are very inexpensive, as it turns out. Let's just briefly take a look at 3 of them. The first, from Fidelity. Here it is. It's ticker FBTC. You can see its expense ratio is 25 basis points. It's just 1/4%. A very low cost, and it's already started trading. And so this is one example of a Bitcoin ETF that you could purchase. Of course, all of these started launched yesterday, so there's obviously no meaningful data on how they'll perform. But that's the first one. Again, I'll leave links to all of this below the video. The second one, BlackRock iShares got into it. They've got their Bitcoin ETF. 25 basis points, but if you actually hover over it, you can see that they're discounting that. They're waiving some of that fee, at least until the fund exceeds 5 billion. And until then, it's 12 basis points. So again, very inexpensive. That's ticker IBIT. And then the third one I'll show you, our good friends at ARK. Kathy Wood loves Bitcoin, so her company has launched their own Bitcoin ETF, ARKB. And I was noticing on this one, by the way, they're actually waiving all the fees at the moment. It's got a fee of how well you can read that, but it's 21 basis points. Let me see if I can make this any bigger. And they're waiving that right now. There's a fee waiver. I don't know how long that lasts. You could check out in their prospectus here. You could find out. But the total fees right now, 0%. I'm guessing that's just their marketing play to try to get ahead of all of the other competition. But there are others. WisdomTree has a Bitcoin ETF, and there are others. But there are 3 of them, probably from some well-known providers. Again, I'll leave links below the video. Now, while all this excitement in the Bitcoin space and these ETFs, there was another storyline. That's Vanguard. Vanguard came out and said, you know what? We don't support Bitcoin, and we're not going to allow our folks that use our platform to buy these Bitcoin ETFs. In fact, there is an article in the Wall Street Journal. It is behind a paywall, but I will leave a link to this as well. And you can see right here, spot Bitcoin ETFs will not be available for purchase on the Vanguard platform, the company said in a statement. We also have no plans to offer Vanguard Bitcoin ETFs or other crypto-related products. As someone who doesn't believe that Bitcoin is a sound investment, I give a lot of credit to Vanguard for taking this stance. And frankly, even for those of you that maybe do invest in Bitcoin, I still think what Vanguard has done here is extremely important, because here's the reality. When it comes to Wall Street and financial firms, what they'll often do is simply sell products that consumers want to buy, even if they might not think they're actually good investments. And I think, at least when it comes to financial products, those companies selling financial products have an obligation to do right by their customers. Now, again, I can see the argument in favor of Bitcoin. I can see the argument against it in terms of whether a company should offer it or not. But I do think we would be better off if more financial firms actually tried to think about what's best for investors and only promote those products that they believe meet that standard, and at least Vanguard is trying to do that, so I give Vanguard a lot of credit. Now, so that's what's happened. Now what I want to do is make what I think is the best case for owning Bitcoin, and I want to be clear about what I'm talking about. There are those folks out there that are just bullish on Bitcoin. Everything is Bitcoin. Think of a Michael Saylor of MicroStrategies, he leveraged his entire company on Bitcoin. His company will live or die based on how Bitcoin does. And so for him, this isn't about maybe allocating 2 or 3 or 5% to Bitcoin. He's pushed all of his chips in. He's 100% in on Bitcoin. And frankly, I just think that's foolish. But of course, at the moment, he looks like a genius because his company's investments in Bitcoin have significant gains. You go back a year and he looked foolish because his Bitcoin investments had significant losses. At the end of the day, how it turns out, who knows? I guess we'll see. But what I'm talking about is sort of the buy and hold, you're just trying to capture the market with your investments. Should you own an allocation to Bitcoin? That's the question I want to address. And so I want to begin by making what I believe to be the best case in favor of allocating some small percentage, I would say in the 2 to 5% tops of your portfolio to Bitcoin. And the first argument in favor of that would be, look, there's no question, I think, that Bitcoin is here to stay. Its market cap now is approaching $1 trillion. Let's see. On CoinMarketCap, its current market cap, I guess it's a really small number here, but I can tell you it's 890 billion. So that's where its market cap is, at least according to this website. So if it were a company in the S&P 500, it'd be part of the Magnificent Seven. It'd be in the top 10. So it's got a significant market cap. And as a sort of buy and hold investor who's trying to capture the market, why exclude Bitcoin? It's certainly true that we can't literally capture the entire market. For starters, there are plenty of investments that aren't publicly traded. And so we can't easily capture privately held assets. But for those assets that are publicly traded, why not try to capture them all? Bitcoin is certainly one of those. It's got a significant market cap. And now, this would be my second argument, as we've seen, we've got all of these funds from very reputable companies where we can invest in Bitcoin for, in the case of ARK, for nothing, at least for now, but even for those other funds, for a very small expense ratio. We don't have to worry about setting up a wallet on Coinbase and cold storage and all that sort of forgetting our passwords. We can let the Fidelities and BlackRocks of the world worry about all of that. And so it's a significant market cap. We can easily invest in it now, and we can do so very inexpensively. Those seem like, to me, pretty good arguments in favor of it. But there's a fourth argument in favor of it that I think is really important, and it's the argument that it gives us some added diversification to our portfolio. Let me show you a couple of things there. The first is an article. This is from CFA Institute. Again, I'll link to it. And they look at the correlation between Bitcoin and a number of different asset classes. The one I want to show you for our purposes is this one. This is the crypto versus mutual fund correlation. And so we can look at Bitcoin down here, and we can look at its correlation. This is with small cap value, small cap growth. MC would be mid cap and large cap. And keep in mind with correlation, if the correlation were 1, that would mean lockstep correlation. If it were large cap growth were 1, it would mean if it goes up by $1, so does Bitcoin. If it goes down by $1, so does Bitcoin. A -1 correlation would mean they move in lockstep, but in the opposite direction. One goes up $1, the other goes down by $1. What we want, if we're looking for diversification, is something close to 0, where there's no correlation at all. Now, as you can see, all of these, at least according to their research, has some level of positive correlation, but it's not that strong. It's in the 0.3 to 0.4 range. And so in that sense, Bitcoin actually could give us some decent diversification as compared to what I'll call standard asset classes. And we can look at that in a different way. It's here. This was just off of Twitter that I found, and hopefully you can read that. But this is just an asset class performance map from 2011 up to year-to-date 2023. So this is a bit dated, but not too much. And you can see Bitcoin either is at the top, that's the green boxes, or they're at the bottom. There's no middle ground for Bitcoin. It's either going through the roof or falling through the floor. But one could argue, hey, that's actually what we want in diversification. We want these asset classes that one, have a lot of volatility. Why not? So long as they're not highly correlated with the rest of our portfolio. And boy, Bitcoin seems to meet that standard quite easily. And so for all of those reasons, I think one could make a good argument that a buy and hold, maybe even a Boglehead investor should own, maybe not a lot, but a small amount of Bitcoin through one of these Bitcoin ETFs. That's at least the best case that I can make in favor of these Bitcoin ETFs. Now, having said that, what am I going to do? And the answer is I'm not buying any of the Bitcoin ETFs. And you might say, well, wait a minute, Rob. You just gave us those arguments. They sound decent. What about those do you have a problem with? Or why aren't you going to invest in Bitcoin? And there's several reasons. The first is I don't like to invest in an asset that basically sits there and does nothing, right? And that would be true in my case with gold as well. And one can make similar arguments with gold as an investment. Again, perhaps small amounts in your portfolio. And I wouldn't fault anyone for owning a small amount of gold. But I don't like things that just sit there and do nothing. I don't think they're great long-term investments. And in fact, for the most part, gold has not been a great long-term investment. You can certainly pick different time periods where it's performed well. You can also pick different time periods where, as part of a broader asset allocation, it's actually helped the portfolio. But you can also see a lot of times where it hasn't. And I'm just not a fan of investing in something that just serves no practical purpose. And with Bitcoin, it actually serves no practical purpose. At least with gold, there is a market for gold, for jewelry and some industrial applications. And it's certainly become, I think, a collectibles market for sure. And so there are some practical uses for gold. There's really no practical uses for Bitcoin. It's not a currency. I know in theory you could buy something with it, but it's not. It was never designed to be a medium of exchange. It wouldn't work at scale as a medium of exchange. And so there's just no practical use for Bitcoin. And so on that basis, I just fundamentally am opposed to it. Related to that is, it is the subject, as we know, of wild speculation. We go back to this chart and it shows us the speculation in a graphic with a lot of color. That's why it's at the top one year and at the bottom the next. Right now, people are buying Bitcoin in the hopes of getting rich, in the hopes that they can sell it later to someone else for more. One Bitcoin today will be equal to one Bitcoin 100 years from now. It doesn't do anything. It's not a business that grows or has the potential to grow. And so right now it's simply trading on speculation. And that's just not the type of investment that I feel like I can own and stick to it over long periods of time. It's just not for me. The third thing is that Bitcoin is used primarily, if it has any use today, it's for criminal activity, right? And in fact, there's some studies. I'll show you one. It's right here. Whoops, that's not it. That's where you can get the report, but I've actually got the report right here, and I'll leave a link to it below this video. And this is a report on crypto crime. And you can see one, I'll just show you one chart here that shows, based on this report and their data, the amount of cryptocurrency used in crime in 2022. The most recent year they have, it was 20 billion. Obviously, Bitcoin is used in ransomware, unfortunately, child abuse. So it's used in a lot of things. Now, when I've raised this issue with Bitcoin investors, what they'll say is, Rob, yeah, but those numbers pale in comparison to the amount of crime that's based in US dollars. We're going to give up the US dollars. But this is where I think there's a fundamental difference. US dollars serve a really important and good purpose in society as a medium of exchange. And if you have anything that's used on a broad scale as a medium of exchange, it's also going to be used for criminal activity. You can't avoid that. But in the case of Bitcoin, it's not used for a good purpose. It's not used for a medium of exchange. It's basically used for speculation or criminal activity. That's really its only use. At least at scale and for a practical matter. And so if it were the medium of exchange, you would expect it to also be used for criminal activity. But from what I can tell, that's just not the case. It's just used for speculation and criminal activity, and it's just something that I choose not to invest in. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone that invests in Bitcoin. We all have to make our own, decisions in this regard. But that's a decision that I have made, at least at the moment. Obviously, if there are new facts that develop with how Bitcoin is used going forward, I might change my view on it. But that's my view right now, and I just don't see a need to complicate my portfolio, expose it to an asset that doesn't actually do anything, and that is subject to wild speculation. And so for me, I'm not going to invest in these Bitcoin ETFs, but it was important for me to lay out the strong case in favor of it as well, because at the end of the day, I'm not here to tell you how to invest. I'm here to share what information I can find. Hopefully you find it useful so that you can make the best decisions for you and your family. So there you go. That's my take on the new Bitcoin ETFs. As I said, I'll leave links to everything below the video. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help you out any way I can. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.